Hello, and welcome to the Shifting Culture podcast, in which we have conversations about the culture we create and the impact we can make. I'm your host, Joshua Johnson. Go to shiftingculturepodcast.com to interact or donate. If you're enjoying this show, don't forget to hit the follow button and to get notified when new episodes hit, and go give a rating or review of this show. It helps us find new listeners. So thank you very much. Previous guests on the show have included Jessica Schrock-Ringenberg, Peyton Jones, and Noah Kay. You could go back and listen to those episodes and more. But today's guest is Talasi Guerra. Talasi is a Christian communicator who is passionate about infusing Jesus into her everyday life and empowering others to do the same. She is the author of Joy Like a Mountain and the 7-Day Joy Challenge. We have a great conversation around what it looks like to pursue joy, cultivate joy in the lives of children, and becoming more like Jesus. Enjoy the conversation. Talasi, welcome to the podcast. I'm excited to have you on.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good. You know, I just want to start here with just a brief snippet of my story. Just 5 years ago, when I moved from the Middle East back to North America, one of the big surprises to me was how evident the mental health crisis was. There was depression, anxiety that was very rampant, that was not present in the Middle East as much as it was in North America. And I know that you struggled before with anorexia, with depression, and you've walked that journey through to get to a place of joy, to get to a place that you found something different. For you, how did that journey, what was that journey like for you? And can you just start to share your story a little bit as we jump on in here?
Yeah. Yes, I have struggled with mental health challenges throughout my life. As a teenager, probably around age 14 or so. Just, through the pressures of being a teenager and kind of trying to figure out where do I fit in this world and, what do I have to offer this world? Just kind of really started struggling with my own sense of personal self-value. And ultimately, various struggles kind of culminated in an eating disorder. And then a long battle with depression and anxiety over the years. And so this was rampant in my life for many years. And ultimately, the journey for me of healing and recovery, came many years later. And I mean, it is a journey. It's not just something that happens overnight,
Yeah.
but for me, it came when I came to a place of really being ready to surrender to God, and say to him, like, hey, like I've tried everything, I've been in and out of the hospital, different programs and facilities and counseling and all these things. And, there's always this little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, but it never seems to culminate in anything really long lasting for me. And so coming to God and surrendering and just saying, I give up, I've tried everything. If you want something to come of my life, I'm going to need you to step in here and get involved. And so, and he did, he answered that desperate cry and began a long journey to overcoming, not just the behavioral struggles with the eating disorder, but the underlying issues of mental health and depression and anxiety. And that's been an ongoing journey, but it has been one that God has been so faithful to me as I have walked that journey.
And so as you surrendered and you put your trust in God and saying, okay, I need your help. I can't do this alone. What are some of those underlying issues that of mental health that he started to work on, and that you switched from believing a lie to believing his truth for your life?
Well, I love the way you put that, because that's really what it was for me. Was there were so many lies that I was believing and that were controlling my life. And actually, somebody had a very meaningful conversation with me early on, and that conversation actually sparked a lot of the movement in terms of my healing and my recovery. And what that person said was, think of your life as though it's a fishbowl. It's an empty
Mm-hmm.
fishbowl. And, if you wanted to scoop the air, take the air out of the fishbowl, you'd have a really hard time just sticking your hand in and trying to scoop it out.
Mm.
What you'd need to do is pour in water to displace the air.
Yeah.
And when you do that, the air is pushed out, it
Yeah.
moves out, and the
Mm.
water takes its place. They said, that's really what the lies are like in your life. If you just kind
Mm.
of try to take them away, try to scoop them out of your heart, out of your mind, nothing's going to happen. They're just going to flow right back in.
Yeah.
When you take the truth and you then pour that into your life, it will then displace the lies. And so I took
Mm.
that to heart, and I really started to dig into what the Bible said and what God said is true about me. And because I was really struggling with those lies that said, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm
Yeah.
not, I'm a failure. I'd grown up with a Christian faith and with Christian values. But as a teenager, as I started to struggle with all these different struggles, I started making all kinds of decisions that I didn't line up with what I
Yeah.
believed was right. And so then, okay, now I'm a failure, and now I feel like a failure. So now I'm going to make more bad
Mm.
decisions. And it was just this really messy cycle. And so I believed that about myself. I'm not
Yeah.
good enough. I can never get out of this cycle. I'm never going to be worthy of God's love. All of these
Mm.
kinds of lies that, really affected my the way I saw myself,
Yeah.
the way I saw the world. And so when I finally allowed God's truth to start pouring in,
Mm.
it was only then that the lies started to slowly move outward, and that truth started to take its place.
Mm. So, what were some of the practical things that you were able to do as you walked that journey to help truth come into your life?
Yeah, early on, as I was, I guess, in that process, it I think what actually was the most revolutionary for me was simply just studying God's word. Like I said, I grew up in the church, but
Yeah.
I'd never like read the Bible. Like I didn't understand the big picture of the Bible.
Yep.
I knew verses here and there, but so in those early days, as I was really starting to kind of double down on this idea of recovery, I started to, well, for me, an eating disorder was a big part of the picture. And so I started to read my Bible every time I ate a meal, or
Mm.
every time I ate anything. And so I would sit and I would just start to read. I started in the New Testament, and I kind of just started to like learn who Jesus is, like
Yeah.
I knew the story, but it was an opportunity for me to actually just like read step by step through the story of the gospel. And so I started doing that, and I started journaling on what I was reading and what I was learning. And as I did that, it was like God was just giving me all this incredible revelation about who I am, who he is, how I fit into the picture of life.
Mm.
And it was just a really powerful thing. So definitely reading God's word, journaling
Mm.
on his word was a practical thing that I did. And I guess just kind of, there were other things that I did at that time. There were, different things that I needed to distance myself from. That
Mm-hmm.
was another, I guess, practical thing that I
Yeah.
did was looking at my life and figuring out, okay, what are the things in my world that are healthy that I should continue, but what are the things that are maybe
Mm.
not healthy for me? And that might be things that
Yeah.
just simply weren't healthy for me in that
Mm-hmm.
season that I could later go back to or whatever.
Yep.
For example, I was at the time studying technical theater at university,
Mm.
and that's a thing that a person can do, and that can be great. But for me at that season, I just looked at it and recognized this isn't healthy for me in this
Yeah.
season for whatever reason. I need to distance myself from this world, and I ended up going to Bible school for a year or two. And that for me in that season was just a practical step that I could take that
Mm.
was healthier for me going forward.
Mm. As you've moved on from that journey, as you've been walking through that, and the busyness of life, family, all sorts of things are happening. How have you started to create some healthy rhythms in your life? And what does it take to not only go through something like that, but actually sustain it for the long haul, and not have it be like, hey, that was a great moment, and I'm back to where I started?
Yeah, for sure. That's a really good question, and I feel in a way, I feel really humbled and honored that I can answer that
Mm,
question
yeah.
in the way that I can, because the story I've just told you happened over 10 years ago.
Yeah.
There has been a long span of life that I've gotten to experience since going through that period of healing, and that is really a gift for me. I'm very, very grateful to
Mm,
God that He has allowed me to have the life that I've had since then. And so, what that has looked like for me over the years has just been a consistent, constant walk with God. And it might sound cliche, or I might sound like a broken record when I say this, but the most important thing in my life has been having that regular,
mm,
consistent time, whatever you want to call it, quiet time,
yeah.
devotion time, that regular, routine, consistent connection with God in my personal life. That looks different in different seasons, but the things that are really important to me that I include in that in some way, shape, or form is studying His Word and spending time in prayer, and then also connecting with other believers. Which is interesting because at my worst, I at when I break it down, I'm totally an introvert at heart. I don't even really like want to be around people, but God has really taught me the
Yeah.
value um, of community
Mm,
and being with other believers, and so that's
yeah.
another, I guess, discipline for me that
Mm,
I have found important to include in my life. And so, yeah, over time, just continuing that relationship and making space,
mm,
prioritizing, getting into the Word, spending time in prayer, spending time with other like-minded believers, and as I've done that, that has continued to allow my relationship with Jesus to grow over the years,
mm,
to the point that I have not then, I've not relapsed back into those very
yeah.
difficult times. Now, I want to I want to be honest and say that that doesn't mean I've never struggled with depression, or I've never
Yeah.
struggled with anxiety ever since. I have had seasons where that has been very, very heavy for
Yeah.
me, even as I walk with Jesus. So part of my journey has been
Mm,
learning how does this fit together for me in my Christian walk. And that's something that's ongoing. But I certainly have come through it to a point and continued to journey with Jesus in such a way that
mm,
He has my trust, even in those
mm,
dark times.
mm. Yeah, and so one of the things that I've felt that as we go through suffering, pains, if you go through those periods of depression, um, you know, oftentimes when people have struggled through that, there is a sense of joy that comes at the other end of it, and a lot of times through the midst of it. I have people in my life that are they're older, they're wiser, they've been through life, and they have joy in the midst of suffering. And I don't really. I tried to figure out, how do you have joy in the midst of suffering. One of the things that I really thought is that um, as we go through life and we go through the ups and the downs, the valley type of days and the mountain type of days, we have found that Jesus has been faithful through it all. He's walked with us, and I actually see that He's with me in everything. And I know that withness and belonging brings a sense of joy in the middle of it. And so, for you, during those times where you could trust God, those times of depression, that you could know that Jesus is faithful to be with you, um, does that bring a sense of joy to you, um, of that place of belonging, that you belong to Him, or is it something else for you?
Yeah, I think there is an element of that. For me, something that brings me an immense measure of joy is remembering the end of the story,
Mm.
which has nothing to do with life on this earth and has nothing
Yeah.
to do with the struggles that I'm in this moment. And different people are moved by different things in the,
Yep.
and for me, a huge thing is just looking ahead to what Jesus has in store for his
Mm.
people as we come into glory, as we come into eternity. I've written a little bit about that picture in my book, Joy Like a Mountain. And for me, that is just so, so powerful. So that is one thing that I know that I can always cling to, because
Yeah.
it doesn't matter what's happening, like what my circumstances are, that picture never changes.
Mm.
And so that is something that I do I can find joy in, no matter what I'm going
Yeah.
through in this life. But I think another thing that's important to say is that um, there's joy as a response. We experience
Hmm.
in life joy as a response to joyous things that happen around us, things that make us happy, things that make us laugh and
Yeah.
smile. So there's that joy. But then there's also joy as a responsibility. And as we look at the
Mm.
biblical picture of what joy really is, we need to start to understand that there's a responsibility on us as followers of Jesus to pursue joy. And
Mm.
the pursuit of joy is not necessarily the same as just feeling joy all the
Right.
time. We're going to be like you said, we're going to be in valleys. We're going to be in very hard times. And Jesus says this.
Yep.
He warns us, hey, like it's not always going to be easy. We're going to be in those hard times. So then the question is, are we able to pursue joy as a responsibility,
Mm.
as a spiritual discipline
Hmm.
in those times of hardship? And I always think of it, David in the Psalms. David David went through some of the deepest, darkest depressions. He
Yep.
went through some incredibly hard stuff. And even in those times, he would say things like, and I will yet praise him. I will
Yep.
yet praise God. And it was like he was telling his spirit and
Mm.
telling his soul, I like everything around me is going crazy. My life is going crazy right now, but I'm telling myself, I'm reminding myself, I'm going to praise God. Like I'm going
Hmm.
to pursue what I know is right, even in the midst of this hardship. And that's really what the pursuit of joy is like
Mm.
in times of suffering, is that resolve to say, no, I know my world is so hard right now, is so difficult. And yet I
Mm.
know the Bible says that the joy of the Lord is my strength. So I will yet praise him. I will yet live in his joy,
Mm.
even in the midst of this.
Yeah, it's really, I think it's really easier to make a choice to pursue joy when you are holding on to the anchor of hope. For you, it's the end of the
Mhm.
story of what it looks like when we see the consummation and we see like wholeness and health and beauty and with Jesus worshiping Him forever. It's a beautiful picture of that gives you hope and that is an anchor. What how do you hold on to an anchor through all of those? I think David was trying to do that as well. Like, hey, I have this stake in the ground that I'm going to say this is it, and then I'm going to pursue
Mhm.
joy in the middle of it.
Yeah, like I don't necessarily know the answer to that question for every person. I think we find those things that, where God reveals something powerful to us and we cling to those truths. And
Hmm.
again, like I said, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but for me in my life, that has been um, not just like knowing about God, but knowing
Mm.
God, reading his word and allowing his word to then penetrate my heart, penetrate my life so much that I then have those scriptures that I
Mm.
know, like I know this is truth because,
Yeah.
God says this and I remember it. So I actually have to do the work to be able to remember it.
Mm.
That doesn't just happen. But if we don't allow that to wash over our lives, it can't really be a stake in the ground for us. But it was the same with David. He knew what
Yeah.
God said and he knew who God was. And so I really think that's a critical part of the puzzle.
Mm. So then, how does that knowing who God is in the midst of life, how does that shift our posture towards other people, and how do we move in community, and what difference does the joy that we have in our lives because of knowing who God is have on the community around us and the people around us?
Well, I think it makes an incredible difference because, I mean, you mentioned at the beginning of this podcast that we are living in a world that is just like insanely ridden with mental health and challenges, and
Yeah.
people are anxious and people are depressed, and we are living in this time of mental crisis.
Hmm.
And even within the church, even within the church, it's like the statistics around mental health are not really that different than outside of the church. Even within pastors, there was a study that was done where 23% of the pastors indicated that they had personally suffered from some type of mental
Yeah.
illness. And I would guess that number is probably low because it's still taboo. Like within
Yeah.
the church, it's probably hard for a pastor to admit that this
Hmm.
has been an issue. And so, like we're in, that's the climate that we're living in.
Yeah.
And so when we all of a sudden shift the culture of our lives to express joy or even to pursue joy,
Yeah.
in the midst of hardship, in the midst of suffering, in the midst of this crazy world that we're living in, like COVID and war and all of these
Mm.
things that we've been living through, when we are taking that posture of, first of all, I'm trusting God, and then because I trust God, I can find joy
Yeah.
in his promises, in his word. When we do that, all of a sudden that stands out to the world around us, because it's almost an anomaly when somebody is living a joyous experience in this hard world.
Yep.
And so it really does impact the world around us because I think it's noticeable.
Hmm. It is very noticeable. We actually see something totally different than what the culture around us is prevailing. What does it look like? And so it's actually walking in into that space is really helpful. One of the things for me that's helpful as I'm interacting with others and community is the joy that happens between me and my son. I have a 4-year-old son, and he brings me an immense amount of joy, and he brings others an immense amount of joy. And so my hope and my prayer is that I could cultivate joy within him as well, so that as we walk together, that others can sense it and feel it and know it and want to pursue that type of joy as well. In your work, as you've worked with families and children, how do we start to help children cultivate joy, and how do children help us cultivate joy in our lives?
Great questions. I in my own experience, I have taken sort of the posture of, if I am going to teach my children to cultivate joy, then they better see me doing it in my life. And
Yeah.
so I think that, to be honest, as a generation of parents raising up children, we have a responsibility to them to cultivate that culture of joy within our lives and within the church. And the reason I say it like that is because I actually think there's a lot at stake. I think there's a
Mm.
lot on the line. In Romans 5, it talks about how when we rejoice in our sufferings,
Mm-hmm.
because suffering produces endurance, which produces character, which produces hope. And
Yeah.
I think about it this way: if we are, what happens if we are then
Mm.
not pursuing the discipline of rejoicing even in sufferings?
Yeah.
Does that then mean we could be experiencing a decline in endurance and character and hope? Like, these are three
Mm.
critical qualities that
Yeah.
we need to navigate through the hardships of
Mm.
life, that our kids need to be able to grow up in this world that we're living in, and where
Mm.
there are so many different challenges
Yeah.
that they're going to face as they grow up. And so I actually feel like that it's a crisis if we are not
Mm.
if we are not developing that culture of joy, because then we're not going to be seeing people growing in these three critical
Mm,
ways in our spiritual growth, in our personal growth. And so yeah, I think that we need to model that. We need to actually implement the practice and the pursuit of intentional
mm,
joy in our lives
yeah.
so that our kids can then see it. Another thing that I think is really important with kids as they are growing, um, is understanding that as much as we need to be in pursuit of joy, we can't force joy on
Yeah.
them. They are developing all the time, and we can't expect them to have the same developmental capacity as we do as
Yeah.
adults. And so, yes, we're modeling that for them, but then we're also gently walking alongside them
Mm,
in their emotions as they're developing in their emotions,
yeah.
and giving them space to actually feel and experience the emotions that they have, and then modeling to them
Mm,
what it looks like. What does mommy do? What do I do when I'm having this really hard time and these really big feelings? How do I then respond to that in a way that says I trust God and I'm pursuing joy?
mhm,
And again, like, I can't shove that down my kid's throat,
right.
but I can model it, and I also can create a safe space for her to feel the big feelings that she has,
Mm,
where, because otherwise what could happen is then she's just going to learn over time to stuff those feelings down
right.
and not to give them a voice and not to acknowledge them, and she won't, and that will make it even harder for her later in life to experience and pursue the joy of the Lord. So
Mhm,
I'm trying to ultimately model to her what God offers to me, which is gentleness,
mm,
patience, love, kindness. And so as we take the fruit of the Spirit that God
yep.
wants to put into our lives and we express that to our kids, it creates a safe place to experiment with joy as a
Mm.
response and as a responsibility.
Yeah, so as we're interacting with our kids and walking alongside as they're developing and growing, what is what is the line for you that you have found in identifying, helping them identifying emotions, and then sharing our own emotions and our process through our emotions and reliance on God through the hardship. Even in adult situations, uh, a lot of times oversharing is not great because people are trying to get something from the other person when they're oversharing. But I know that vulnerability is really key to build trust with another. What is that balance with kids as we're navigating emotions
Mm-hmm.
and moving forward through them?
I think, yeah, that's a great question, and it's an important one. And, I have to, not everybody listening to this podcast is like an experienced children's communicator. And so it's hard, it's hard to do that. I think keeping it simple and keeping it short is always a
Mm,
good, is maybe a good like
yeah.
indicator, um, when it comes to sharing personal stories. I think what's important for kids is to know that they're not alone. They're
Mm,
not the only person who's ever felt this way, this
yeah.
big feeling. I think they just need to know, okay, somebody can identify with me, and I'm not a monster because I'm screaming right now.
Yeah.
Like, they just need to know, hey, you know what? When I was 5, I remember having this experience where
Mm,
I had these big feelings, and like, I think kids just need to know that they're safe and that they're loved regardless of their behavior. And that's
hmm
really important, because I think sometimes as parents we can get so frustrated, and then our frustrations come out on
mm,
them in a way that makes them question, like, am I safe and am I loved in this moment? And
yeah.
so I think they need to be reassured, you're
Mm,
safe and you're loved. This behavior might not be what we're looking for in this moment, but you're safe and you're loved. Um, and you're not alone.
mm,
You're not alone, because I'm not leaving you alone with your big feelings, but also you're not alone because you're not the only person who's ever felt this way.
mm,
In fact, let's look at the Bible. Look at David. He felt this way, and
yeah.
and so Yeah, and that sounds all really great. Like, hey, go and have this conversation with your kid. If your kid is anything like my kid, she is very intolerant of having conversations about feelings. It's very challenging to have
Yeah.
these kind of conversations. So
Yeah.
also pick your moments and give
Mm.
yourself grace if it doesn't go really well, because sometimes kids are just like, nope, don't want to talk about it. And that's okay too.
Yeah.
Remember that it comes down to modeling, and also your response is really important. And
Yeah.
is your response creating a safe place where they
Mm.
can, it's, like God is our loving father where he can handle our mess.
Yeah.
And so are we going to model that to our kids? Can we handle their mess?
Mm. Yeah, and it seems like a lot of our dealings as adults with one another is the feeling of I am unsafe, I am not loved in this situation, and yeah, I am alone in this situation. And it's us trying to figure out how do we actually get back to being like children and knowing that God has us, that we are safe, we are loved, and we're not alone. We're with one another.
Mm-hmm.
So as we're walking as adults through these types of things, through some of these traumas of early childhood that we bring with us. How is that process? What's that process like to get to the other side so that we could be with God into a better emotional state than I think a lot of adults are?
Yeah, great. Another great question. I don't know if I'm the expert on this. Some things that have been important for me in terms of walking that journey has been, hey, being willing to actually get help. Are there things in your world that you would benefit from speaking to a counselor? Probably. I personally think most of us could benefit from that.
Mhm.
I do. And so, just like kind of calling a spade and saying, hey, you know what, I need some help, and it's
Yeah.
okay to get help. And then also, taking intentional time to process through that stuff,
Mm.
spending time, with God in prayer, reflecting on those things and working through those things, whether that's, in a small group setting, with your spouse, or even just on your own. For me, personal reflection is a really powerful
Mm.
tool that
Yeah.
I have used for many, many years. And that has been really, really powerful for me. And yeah, ultimately, I think it is a work that God does in us. There are all these things that we can do, but then we also have to be surrendered to God in the process of healing. And remembering that, some miraculous healings do happen in an instant, but also some very miraculous healings happen over time.
Yep.
And I believe that that was the case for me with my eating disorder. To me, it was totally a miracle that I came out of that after 7 years of battling with that, demon in my life. And it happened over time, but it was no less of a miracle. And so
Mm.
giving ourselves time and space.
Nice. That's good. Thank you for that. I would love to figure out the space of as we're in our communities and our families and our lives. What does it actually mean to embody Jesus? To start to be like Him in the world that we live in, and what are some steps to get to the space of being more like Jesus in our lives?
Yeah. Can I continue to be a broken record? Like, I mean, we can't be like Jesus if we don't know what Jesus is like. So
Mm.
we need to constantly be allowing our hearts and our minds to be filled with the things of who he is, and to be filled with his word and his truth. I think it's hard in today's culture where there are just so many distractions and so many things to capture our attention, social media
Hmm.
and like movies and TV and all this stuff that is just constantly filling us. And I don't know about you, but something that I feel on a regular basis is just like information overload, to the point that I become extremely
Yeah.
anxious because there's just so many things coming into my mind all the
Yeah.
time as I'm scrolling my social feeds. Like, it takes me like a minute of scrolling my social feeds to feel like completely overwhelmed
Yep.
with anxiety, with everything that's happening in the world and all the different opinions that everybody is sharing. thing, and it's all, I can access it so quickly. And I think that does not create a very spacious culture, or
Yeah.
like climate for us to really experience that work of sanctification in our lives,
Mm.
that work of becoming more like Jesus. Because as this information is just filling our brains and overflowing in our bodies and in our lives, like so much that our bodies feel it, right? Like it
Yeah.
comes out in physical expressions of anxiety. It's very difficult to become more like Jesus, as we just don't have the capacity to like work on things, or so I think we need to set some really clear boundaries for ourselves, and that's very hard to do in this day and age. And I say that as someone who this very week has been struggling with that,
Mm.
like recognizing, okay, these are some places where I'm really struggling to like allow that work to be happening, to allow that, work of sanctification to be happening in my life, because
Yeah.
I'm just not creating space for it, or I'm not removing the things that are getting in the way.
Mm.
And I can identify them, and I can see what I need to do. I'm just not doing it, right? So, and I think that's something that we struggle with.
Yeah.
And probably throughout history that has been the case for believers who are trying to follow Jesus. But I think it's making some hard calls, and sometimes that's like, cutting that thing off, right? When Jesus talks about it'd be better for you to go into eternity without a hand, like just chop it off,
Yeah.
and rather than have all your limbs and go into hell. Like I think we need to remember, hey, like there are some things that are getting in the way,
Yeah.
whether that's social media or whether that's this or that. There's some things that are getting in the way that are making it
Mm.
challenging for us to make those moves that we need to make. So what does the boundary look
Mm.
like for me
Yeah.
in this season? And it's not always the same. It's not going to be the same for everybody. It's not going to be the same for every season, but we have to be willing to have those honest conversations with ourselves
Yeah.
and actually call it what it is, and then take those steps.
Mm.
And so those steps, like I said, could look different, but
Yeah. I mean, I'm in Kansas City now, but I, grew up in the Seattle area, and I love going outdoors and hiking,
mhm.
being in nature. One of my first dates with my now wife, she while we were talking, I found out that she really wanted to go on a hot air balloon ride. And so when I first came to visit Kansas City to see her, I set it up. And then the weather didn't work out. But then I went up, and we had a wedding to go to about a month and a half later, uh, just outside of Vancouver. And then, so we got a hot air balloon ride in July in Langley. And it's a beautiful place up there. And so I love that area. I love the mountains and being able to get out in nature and to hike. What are some? So that's for me. That's a boundary line where I'm going to take some time away, and I'm going to be in
Mm,
nature. I'm going to be in creation, and
mhm.
enjoy God's creation. And it's really helpful. I don't have to have my phone on. And there's things. What are some of the things for you that helps create some space and gives you boundaries to move forward?
Yeah. I mean, it's tough in the season when you have small kids. I've got a 4-year-old and a 1.5-year-old. And so you kind of feel like you are always on the go, and there's not
Yep.
about there aren't boundaries with
Yeah.
small kids. Uh, but you know what, for me, like, and everybody is different. Some of the things that are so important for me are having time to journal. Journaling has been a really,
Mm.
really important thing for me. And I also love doing that outside in nature. I'm
Yeah.
from Langley, by the way. I live in Langley, so that's a cool
Nice.
story to hear.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I like being outside and kind of just connecting to God in the world that He created. Um, so that's a good one for me.
Mm.
And having time. Like I said earlier, I'm an introvert,
Yeah.
and so I need to have time alone. Some people totally
Hmm.
recharge with other people, not me. I need time alone to reflect on my experience, but also reflect on God's
Mm.
word, and how that intersects with my life.
Yeah.
And so those are some of the things that are just really, really important for me. And then, on a kind of on another level, also creating space for my family to have time together, that is sort of like
Yeah.
what you said, like we don't have to have our phones on. We can just be together. We can just enjoy each other without the pressure of this is the next thing that we need
Yeah.
to be ready to go and do. I'm also
Yeah.
very task focused, so I can be so like I'm thinking about the next thing all the time, and what does the schedule say, and
Yeah.
sometimes I just need to, my boundary has to be that no, there's nothing else after this. Like I'm just in this moment,
Hmm.
and enjoying what God has allowed me to have in this
Hmm.
moment. And so that's another one.
Wow. I love being able to enjoy the beauty of the moment, especially when
Hmm.
like there is always something next. Like my wife and I both are very future oriented, and we're very like achiever based. Like let's go, go,
Hmm.
go, and we have to figure out how to slow down and enjoy the moment together. And it does. It takes that work to remind us and remind ourselves. Hey, this is what it actually looks like to sit and enjoy the moment and be
Yeah.
thankful to God. What role is gratitude and thankfulness played as you've walked this journey?
Yeah, it's played a significant role. Gratitude is so important when it comes to that pursuit of joy that we talked about. I think it's like something that God has given us, and even he actually even like trains, in the Old Testament, the Israelites. It's like he's training the Israelites in gratitude.
Yeah,
As he gives these commandments, and these things. It's like he's trying to train them to remember and to be thankful.
yeah,
And that's something that we need to train ourselves to do too. And so
mm,
that's again kind of like a discipline, that could have been in the list of things that I do to create that space,
yeah,
is taking time to just reflect on what I'm grateful for. And, whether that is, okay, I'm going to list out 10 things about who God is, about God's character that I'm so
yeah,
thankful for, the ways that those things have impacted me, or that's just taking time to list out 10 things that are just in my life that I'm
mm,
grateful for. Gratitude has played an important role in my journey, and I think it's an important tool when it comes
mm,
to cultivating joy.
yeah. One of the things that's helped in the gratitude arena helped in my life to cultivate joy is to have moments of joy that I have visually that I remember
Mm,
in my life, so that I could actually go in my mind to those moments. And as I started to build those moments up and knowing that they're there, that it could actually ground me in the midst of something. It's easier for me to go back to them and remember, oh, yes, that moment. There's
yeah.
you know, there's this time I remember when we were living in Jordan and with our team in Jordan, we went and had a retreat, and spent we got up really early in the morning, and we went up to an old castle, and we kind of broke into the old castle, and we got up high and watched the sun rise over the city. Um,
Mm,
and that moment to be that I go back to that quite often, that moment with those people, and with a city that I love and a people that I love, the sun was
mm,
rising above them, was a moment of gratitude that I go back to, that actually starts to help ground me when I'm feeling anxious, and I'm feeling like I'm unstable. I actually am able to go back to that memory.
mm. That's powerful. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, a couple of questions. This has been fantastic around
Mm,
joy and children. It's been fun. But a couple of questions at the end. One is, if you could go back to your 21-year-old self
mm.
now, what advice would you give?
What a great question. Um, I think uh, I think I would. I don't know so much if it would be advice, But I think it would be kind of what I was talking about a little bit earlier when it comes to like what kids need in those moments. I
Mm,
think it would be more just like, hey, I see you.
mm,
You're not alone. And you know,
mm.
gosh, I could go on and on, but I think it would
Yeah.
just be that there would be it would be more of a feeling that that 21-year-old needed. That's like, you're seen,
Mm,
you're not alone, you are loved by the God who created you,
yeah.
and he sees you.
Mm,
He is the God who sees you. And I think it would be more of a reassurance.
mm. I like that. I like that a lot, and I hope others can hear that as well. That as you're walking this journey, that there is a God that sees you,
Mm-hmm.
and you're not alone.
Yeah,
Anything?
because oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, like for me, a struggle has always been like, what do I need to do? And the
Right.
idea of what
Yeah.
advice would I give? It makes it seem like there's just this big thing that you need
Mm,
to do to get through this. But I think sometimes what we need is to just
mm,
no, it's not what you're gonna need to do.
yeah.
It's that you're loved and you're seen, and there's somebody who's doing something in you.
Wow.
And I think there are probably a lot of people who need to know that.
Hmm. That's so good. I love that.
Mhm.
Anything you've been reading or watching lately you could recommend?
Um, this has not been a really big reading season for me.
Why? You have a one
Oh,
and a half year old? Like what? What?
yeah. I've been I have been trying to keep up to my Bible reading plan. So I can recommend
Perfect.
the Bible. I can
Yes.
recommend the Bible right now.
That's awesome. Anything in scripture right now that you resonate with that has been helpful for you?
Yeah, something that has been on my heart a lot lately, and partly because I've spoken on this topic a few times recently, but just uh, when it comes to those portions of scripture that we struggle with because they sound condemning,
Hmm.
when what the things
Yeah.
that Jesus
Hmm.
says that sound condemning, or the things that we read in scripture that sound condemning, sometimes I think it's so important that we turn off that voice of self-condemnation so that we can
Hmm.
listen for what Jesus is actually saying, or what God
Hmm.
is actually telling us. And some of those, so for example,
Yeah.
when Jesus says, "Do not worry." Okay, I'm a worrier.
Yeah.
I am I am I am an expert worrier. And when I hear Jesus say, "Do not worry," I immediately feel like a failure. And so
Yeah.
it's taking time to, sit with those uncomfortable portions of scripture, like, do not worry, do not be anxious about anything, rejoice always. These are uncomfortable things for a person like me to
Mm.
read,
Yeah.
because I struggle with those things. Am I a failure? Does God hate me because
Mm.
I can't do this? But like sitting with them long enough and listening to what he is really saying, to the point that now I can understand that when Jesus says, "Do not worry," this isn't so
Mm.
much a statement about me, but it's a statement about who he is. And he's not saying, "Hey, don't worry because you're capable of not worrying." He's saying, "Don't worry because I'm capable of
Mm.
being enough for you." And so just like as a
Mm.
parent, I would hold my child and I would say, "Shh, it's okay, don't worry. I've got you.
Mm.
I know what my kids need.
Yeah.
Jesus knows what I need, and he can remind me that, hey, I've got you. You
Mm.
don't need to worry." And so that those things have been on my heart and my mind a lot recently. And
Mm.
yeah, just kind of getting beneath the uncomfortable to hear what, to not hear so much what I think it's saying, but
Yeah.
what he's actually saying.
Yeah. That's great. Where can people find you, and anything you want to point people to?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I have been trying to pull back from those a little bit, so you'll see me there sometimes, but not as consistently as maybe you might have a few months or years ago. But I am there, and I'd love to connect with you on either of those platforms. You can also find me at talasiguerra.com. That's that's a mouthful. My name is a difficult one to remember or to guess how to spell. So maybe it'll be linked in the show notes or
Yep,
something. I don't
it
know.
will be.
But you can find me on my website, and also on Amazon. My book Joy Like a Mountain is available on Amazon, Audible, and I also have a 7-day joy challenge. So if this is something that you are looking to, pursue in your life, if this is something you like to work on, you need a little help with, you need a little boost, I've got a 7-day joy challenge that is just a really simple 7 days, a daily devotional and application activity that is designed to help you implement that pursuit of joy in your life. So that's also available through my website.
Yeah, I highly recommend take that 7-day joy challenge because we all need joy in our life and a lot more joy in our life, and we want to pursue that and go get Joy Like a Mountain. The book, read it, and pursue joy in your life. And so, Talasi, thank you so much for this time that we could start to help us pursue joy in our lives, to cultivate that joy so that we can start to implement that and we can start to look a little bit more like Jesus. So thank you so much. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks for having me. It's been a joy. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you for listening to the show today. If you're really enjoying the show, please don't forget to hit the follow button on your favorite podcast app. You can do it right now. Just hit that little plus. And then I would love it if you would leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. So you could go right now to the show and leave a star rating and review and let us know how you are enjoying the show. And find us on Facebook and Instagram. So if you want to connect, interact, I post a lot of quotes and different things that you could actually interact with the episodes and let me know how you are enjoying the show. If you feel inclined to donate, there is a support the show link in the show notes, and it would send you directly to a page where you could donate so that new episodes can be produced for your enjoyment. So thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have an incredible week.